So thank you for coming, and I want to give you questions about your life and about your teaching career. So could you please tell me a few words about your life in general? For example, where were you born, your youth, maybe anything that you would like to tell?
I was born and raised in southern Ontario in Canada, and I was educated there, and then I basically wanted to travel. My grandparents were Irish, and I lived in Ireland for many years, and then I traveled around some of Europe and with Israel and some of the Caribbean, all over Canada and things like that. I always liked traveling. Came to Russia about 4 years ago and taught for a year, and I went back, and I did some teaching before I came to Russia and some teaching after, but I found that I'd like to come back and experience more of Russia and teach as well.
So you did like Russia more than other countries that you visited?
Yeah, I like it as well. I love Ireland.
Ah, really? When were you there last time?
Just on my way back from Russia, I visited my cousins there. So, but I lived there back in about the 80s.
Okay, thank you. Could you please tell me something about your education, your degree, your university, maybe a few words about your university life?
It wasn't much of a life. I went to the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario, and I got a BA in English. I also took psychology and history. I love history, but I didn't take that much history in school. I didn't want to lose my interest in it because of that, so I became involved in different, it's hard to describe them, living history groups. Basically sometimes you reenact the time period of Canadian history. So in order to get the public interested in it, you're more or less acting and things like that. So.
And what about your double certification? When did you take it, and what did you get from it?
I think it was in 2003 I took a TESOL course with the International College of Linguistics. It was based out of Ottawa, but I took it in London. It was about a week-long course, 60 hours or so. I think my real education was the last time I was teaching here. I learned the hard way what they wanted most. I've done some teaching at community college level back home in Canada. Teaching English is much easier when you're talking to someone in your own language. It's you're more or less lecturing. When you're doing English as a second language, you're trying to get the students to talk more. And I couldn't get that through my head sometimes, but to keep forcing myself to let them talk or encourage them to talk.
So it was difficult for you?
It was difficult to get the idea across, but I tried to make them talk rather than myself, and doesn't seem very hard because I prefer not to talk that much.
Okay, I see. Do you like sports? What is your favorite kind of sport?
Hiking.
Okay.
Hiking.
Hiking.
Yes, I'm not really much into team sports. I like to ride my bike.
So you ride a bike?
Well, yes.
It's a little bit dangerous, I think, no?
Not really. I find the back roads avoid much of the heavy traffic. I like to get out in the country. I love country, and then find myself a nice woods to go hiking. I was raised in the country, so I didn't like the city that much. So whenever I get the chance to go out to the country and go for a hike in the woods or something like that, that was where I spent my childhood. I spent more time in the woods than I did anywhere else. So
That is interesting. I think just to explore nature and things like that. Do you have any additional skills except your excellent teaching, for example? Do you play some musical instruments, or what can you tell me about this?
I don't know whether I can say I play the guitar, I sort of play with it. I had a guitar, I was going to bring it with me, but I had to leave it behind because of they only allowed you so much baggage to come along with, so I left that behind and maybe pick up a guitar somewhere around here and maybe practice it some more.
Can you sing?
Some people think so.
I think you shouldn't be so shy, because it is very good that you play the guitar. You can just use it during our parties, English parties here. You shouldn't be so shy. Everything is okay. So, I think we already have spoken about your decision to come to Russia. You've been here before, and you like this country, as far as I understand. What is your favorite place in Moscow?
Red Square. I often just hang around there, just wander about. And just something about the atmosphere of it. It was just hard to describe. Someone who loves history can actually look at a rock and say somebody stood on that rock. That's their fascination, is what was there. Red Square is just something that it's so much history, and it's sitting there. It's like you feel the ghosts of the past when you're in a place like that, and that's what I found most interesting about Red Square. It was just fascinating to be around there.
I think I can understand what you're talking about. So yes, it is kind of romantic. Okay, thank you. So let's come back to teaching. Whom do you prefer to teach in general? I mean, just children, teenagers, or adults?
Adults, possibly, because they're more interested in what they're doing. They're by their own choice. They're not sometimes. Teenagers and children are sort of forced to take English, but I found that most of my classes when I was teaching with BKC was with adults, one class of teenagers, one 20s, younger adults. But I went out to a BKC country, they called it. It was like a camp. I taught a lot of more or less the children there, so 9 to 15, 16. I liked that too. I found I liked it after a while. It became more interesting to me.
And which difficulties did you happen to face during your teaching, and how did you solve them? Could you name just a few of difficult situations that a person may face with while teaching EFL, so English as a foreign language?
Well, children, you just can't hold them down. You get kind of occupied and get something to keep them, let them move around, and then try to settle them down and try and focus on the language. Teenagers, they just have better things on their mind. So they try to make it as interesting as you can, something that might interest them. Adults, they have their limitations on how long they can pay attention to. They say that in the first 15 minutes you teach, and the rest is you lose their interest, and that's even with adults. You have to kind of keep them focusing, refocusing on the language or the subject.
Okay, I see. What do you think of Russian students in general? I think you should have seen students of different nations. What do you think about Russian students, and what would you like to tell them, to wish them, for example?
I think they're a little more disciplined than Canadians. They're getting too out of hand anymore back at home. In Canada talk back to you sometimes. You don't have that much problem, but sometimes you have trouble focusing their attention. That's the major problem with Russians. They're fairly easy to get along to. Once they open up, then you can get more of a dialogue and more friendly conversation on that. But there's a reserve at first. I think that might be a thing, but that's not that far from Canadians. Canadians are very reserved.
Really? Okay, thank you very much for this interview and thank you for your time. So I think that's it.
Fine, thank you.